Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The September sun beat down harshly on the construction site on the muddy banks of the Mississippi. Dust hung in the hot air, mingling with the metallic clang of cranes and the dull thud of jackhammers. The smell of fresh concrete and heated metal filled the air, a familiar scent to the workers, but heavy on weary souls. Marcus Johnson, 28, tall and athletic, advanced cautiously along the scaffolding. His dark skin gleamed in the sunlight, contrasting with his clothes stained with dust and paint. Marcus was respected by his colleagues for his efficiency and patience, but he also knew the dangers of a construction site where the hierarchy tolerates no dissent. A few meters away, Bradley Turner, the foreman, paced the construction site with the arrogant authority of a man who believes his strength and position justify everything. Turner, 42, with hard features and cold eyes, had a notorious contempt for those he considered inferior, and Marcus was often the target of his venomous remarks. That day, the atmosphere was electric. The workers murmured in hushed tones about the incidents of the previous weeks, mistakes attributed to Marcus, public humiliations, palpable tension. Yet Marcus, calm and collected, moved forward like a man who knew his worth. He adjusted each beam with precision, examined each fastener, and assessed each cable. For him, every action mattered, his life, and the lives of others, depended on this meticulousness. Turner, seeing Marcus correct a beam position without permission, felt his ego stung. There was something about the way Marcus moved his hands, confident and methodical, that deeply irritated Turner. "What do you think you're doing?" Turner yelled, his voice piercing the din of the construction site. "You really think you know better than me?" Marcus, without losing his composure, simply replied in a calm voice. "I just want to make sure everything is safe, Bradley. Nobody wants an accident here." But Turner wasn't listening. Blinded by anger and pride, he surged forward and, in an impulsive gesture, grabbed Marcus by the collar, hurling him off the scaffolding. Time seemed to slow down. The shouts of the workers faded into a distant hum. Marcus's heart pounded as he plummeted into the void, each second stretched by fear. Then, almost miraculously, fate intervened. A beam, poorly secured by Turner himself, intercepted Marcus's fall, cushioning his impact. Breathless, his body shaking, Marcus was alive. Dust settled slowly around him, like a veil concealing the severity of the accident. Turner, shocked and incredulous, stood at the edge of the scaffolding, unable to believe what he had just unleashed. That day, karma, invisible but powerful, had begun its work. Marcus had just escaped death, and the story was only just beginning. The sun was slowly setting over the Mississippi construction site, casting long, shimmering shadows on the scaffolding and steel beams. It had been an exhausting day, every worker running between the fresh concrete and the screaming cranes, but Marcus Johnson moved with an almost supernatural calm. Every step on the scaffolding seemed calculated, every gesture precise. For him, the construction site wasn't just a place of work, it was a place where skill and caution could save a life. Bradley Turner, the foreman, paced the construction site with his usual arrogance, watching the workers with a piercing gaze. His boots pounded the ground as a reminder of his superiority. Marcus knew that this kind of pride could lead to disaster, but he had to stay focused. It all started with a simple adjustment. A metal beam, misaligned by Turner himself, was leaning dangerously. Marcus, noticing the defect, approached to reposition it. "Hey! What are you doing here?" yelled Turner when he saw him touch the beam. Marcus raised his hands, as if to show that he was not looking for conflict. "I just want to make sure it holds." "Safety first, Bradley." Turner clenched his fists. Marcus's voice, calm and confident, resonated like an affront to his authority. "I told you not to touch anything. You think you know better than me, you." Before he could finish his sentence, Turner rushed towards Marcus, grabbed him by the collar, and hurled him violently over the edge of the scaffolding. Marcus's scream mingled with the shouts of the workers, frozen in a mixture of terror and disbelief. The wind whistled around him as he fell, each second seeming to last an eternity. And then, the miracle. The poorly secured beam, the very same mistake Marcus had tried to correct, intercepted his fall. The impact was brutal, but he survived, falling to his knees in a cloud of dust and debris. His clothes were torn, his body ached, but his life was intact. Turner, standing at the edge of the scaffolding, was frozen. His eyes flashed with a mixture of rage and fear. He had never imagined Marcus could survive such an act. Humiliation was already beginning to creep into his mind. For the first time, he was not in control. Marcus, panting but conscious, slowly rose to his feet. He looked at Turner with a calm that contrasted sharply with the storm in the foreman's eyes. That look said, "I'm alive, and you'll have to answer for that." That day, an invisible line was drawn. Marcus had just survived an assassination attempt, and Turner had just opened the door to a karmic reckoning he had never imagined. The construction site, a silent witness to this tragedy, continued its noisy activity, unaware that the real storm was only just beginning. The days following the incident were fraught with tension on the construction site. Marcus Johnson continued to work with his usual precision, but every move was scrutinized, every glance filled with suspicion. Turner, for his part, couldn't get over the humiliation. The thought that Marcus had survived his deliberate attempt to bring him down gnawed at him day and night. Every morning, Turner watched Marcus closely, looking for the slightest opportunity to humiliate him in front of the other workers. He made him run around doing impossible tasks, overloaded him with work, and, for every minor mistake, ridiculed him with cruel sarcasm. "Marcus, look at this, you're the one who should fall, not the beam," Turner shouted one morning, as the workers tensed around him. But Marcus, silent, continued his work, his skillful hands adjusting the beams, checking every cable and every fastening with unwavering calm. He didn't let Turner's wounded ego cloud his mind. In reality, Marcus wasn't just a worker, he was observing, understanding, and preparing for the moment when karma would strike. Behind the scenes at the noisy construction site, Marcus began to formulate a plan. He knew that Turner had 3 major weaknesses. Arrogance, he believed that no one could override his authority. Impatience, he often acted without to think, which made him vulnerable. The haste in the checks, he ignored the details, thinking his strength was enough for everything. Marcus knew that revenge should not be immediate, but subtle, methodical, almost invisible. He began to adjust the security mechanisms and observed the construction site with almost scientific precision, noting every movement, every potential mistake by Turner. He spent his breaks thinking, planning how to turn Turner's strength and arrogance against him, without ever resorting to direct violence. He knew that the humiliation Turner had inflicted would be amplified by a life lesson he couldn't ignore. The workers, for their part, were beginning to notice a subtle change. Marcus didn't talk much, but every movement he made seemed charged with determination and control. Some whispered, "He survived that fall, now he seems almost invincible." Turner, for his part, saw nothing coming. Each passing day fueled his frustration and his obsession with Marcus, making him increasingly reckless. He inspected the installations without consulting anyone, making sure to show everyone that he was in charge of the site. He was unaware that every move was being meticulously observed and orchestrated to become his own downfall, not physical this time, but moral and psychological. This chapter ends on a palpable note of tension. Marcus has survived, Turner is obsessed and arrogant, and fate is beginning to align. The turning point is approaching, and no one on the construction site will be able to ignore what's about to happen. The following Friday, the construction site was a hive of activity. A huge metal container was to be installed atop the main scaffolding, and the tension was palpable. Marcus Johnson, calm and focused, supervised the operation with the precision of a conductor. Every cable, every pulley, every fastening was checked and double-checked. His eyes scanned the site like those of a strategist, anticipating the slightest unforeseen eventuality. Turner, brimming with confidence, intervened in the preparations. He wanted to show everyone that he remained in charge, ready to correct what he considered to be Marcus's overcautiousness. "Let me handle this, Marcus," Turner shouted, approaching the container. You don't know what you're talking about. Marcus remained silent. He knew Turner was impatient and impulsive, and that this arrogance would be his weakness. He continued giving instructions to the workers while Turner inspected the wiring alone, ignoring Marcus's meticulous checks. When Turner climbed onto the platform to examine the container, Marcus sensed the moment had arrived. He had subtly but strategically adjusted some safety cables. If Turner intervened carelessly, he would face an unforeseen danger. Turner, overconfident, failed to realize that his haste and arrogance had made him vulnerable. Suddenly, the container tipped slightly under his weight and imbalance, and Turner found himself dangling in mid-air, clinging to a loose cable. His cries seemed to carry through the air like a warning. Marcus calmly stepped forward and extended his hand. Turner, panicked, realized that his survival depended on the man he had tried to humiliate. The other workers held their breath, unable to move. "Marcus, help me," stammered Turner, terrified and humiliated. Marcus carefully pulled him toward the platform. Turner was safe and sound, but the shock and fear flashing through his eyes were worse than any fall. For the first time, he felt what Marcus must have gone through: the humiliation, the fear, and the feeling of helplessness. "You see, Bradley," Marcus said in a calm but firm voice. "Haste, arrogance, it can be very costly. You should think about it." Turner remained silent, unable to formulate a response. His pride had been shattered, and for the first time, he looked at Marcus not as a subordinate, but as someone whose mastery and patience far surpassed his own. That moment was the turning point. Marcus hadn't sought revenge through violence, he had let karma take its course in an intelligent, subtle, and relentless way. The entire construction site had witnessed a life lesson etched in metal and fear: no arrogance could triumph over skill and patience. After the container incident, the construction site was silent. The workers watched Marcus and Turner with a mixture of respect and astonishment. They had never seen Turner in such a vulnerable state. His arrogance had been shattered in seconds, replaced by genuine fear and a profound sense of shame. Turner, his face pale and trembling, initially avoided Marcus's gaze. He knew he had narrowly escaped disaster and that his own recklessness could have cost several lives, including his own. The lesson he had just learned was far more severe than any public humiliation. He had experienced fear, helplessness, and regret. Marcus, for his part, remained calm. He did not let anger guide his actions. Instead, he showed everyone that patience, competence, and discernment could triumph over violence and arrogance. "Bradley," Marcus said softly, his voice calm but firm, "you've learned something today. It's not my place to punish you, but you need to understand that every action has consequences." Turner, unable to look away, nodded slowly. His trembling voice betrayed his sincerity. I'm sorry, Marcus. I should never have acted like that, not towards you, not towards anyone." Marcus gave a slight smile, an expression of forgiveness but also of firmness. Fear and humiliation are not effective weapons. But now you know that respect and prudence are worth more than pride. Over the following weeks, Turner changed radically. He became a fair foreman, more attentive and respectful towards his workers, especially Marcus. He understood that true authority lies not in fear or force, but in fairness, competence, and wisdom. The workers, witnessing this transformation, began to look upon Marcus not only as a colleague, but as a silent leader, capable of transforming a situation of death and hatred into a lasting lesson. Marcus, for his part, continued to work with the same calm and precision, aware that his survival was not a simple stroke of luck, but the result of his vigilance, patience, and self-control. The construction site, which had been the scene of intense drama and brutal injustice, became a symbol of redemption and karma. Marcus had shown that true strength lies in self-control, patience, and wisdom, and that justice can prevail on its own, sometimes more effectively than any revenge. As the sun set over the Mississippi construction site, the shadows of the cranes lengthened peacefully. Marcus watched the horizon, serene, knowing that, for once, fate had delivered justice in a perfect and implacable way.